Hey everyone, thanks for jumping in. My name is Anthony Khaletsky and this is Outside In. Today I have a special guest, Michael Popa, who is a customer success thought leader. Michael, thanks for jumping in.
Sure. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks. You have a long history of working in customer success, and I'm sure there's a ton of different trends out there. I'd love to start the conversation off if you could just define to me what customer success means to you.
Absolutely. For me, it's all about ensuring customer value throughout their life cycle with a partner, with a solution provider. But the important thing to understand is it's about the different personas within that customer. Because as a customer goes through that life cycle, there's different personas, and each of them will have different objectives or different roles that they need to be successful at. It could be from an end user, it could be from someone in finance, right, that has to approve a PO or even work with you on getting the renewal paid. So it's really about all personas at a customer having the right experience with you, that company that's providing that service.
Awesome. Thanks for that. We had discussed a little bit earlier that how a lot of people, again, have different methodologies. And so everyone who works on customer success has their own methodology. What are some foundational strategies you apply to create customer success?
Yeah, good question. I don't think there's a wrong way to be doing customer success. I guess if you're not doing it, that might be the only wrong way. But the fundamentals, I think, to executing customer success are really having a handoff between sales and the customer success organization. And there's a couple essential things at that handoff. One is to communicate between the sales organization and customer success. What are the customer goals, objectives? Really given that profile of everything the sales team went through so there's good knowledge transfer. Customer does not want to have to go through all that again as they go from a pre-sales to a post-sales motion. Is one. And the second thing I think is very important is actually a milestone for a handoff, right? It is actually a milestone where there is an introduction to the customer success team and the associated processes for the right personas at the customer side. It's not a figurative thing in a timeline or in a process. It needs to be a milestone, and it's very definitive to the customer that this just changed and that's okay, and it's probably a good thing. So that transitions one, onboarding is second, right? Making sure that the users, the customer, they know how to engage in training, they know how to engage in support, what the support vehicles are, right? So they really know, okay, I'm now onboarded. I know how to work with my new partner, right? From how does the application work? How does the solution work? How do I engage somebody if I have questions or technical challenges? Very important. The third piece in that methodology, I believe, is around customer engagement, and that's where you're monitoring the customer's interaction with their entitled service. So not necessarily just the application, but with support and so forth. And you're monitoring it for several reasons. One, to make sure they're maximizing their value, so they have a very small value gap. But then the other reason too is so that you can communicate with them and make them aware of, hey, we have new features coming out. Be aware of these features. These are the benefits. Or even you have a value gap. You're not using this feature or function. Here's why it might benefit you. I think the final one is value confirmation, right? Making sure the customer and each persona is aware of the value they're getting from that relationship, from that solution. And I think it's a life cycle. That's not linear. It's this ongoing process that you go through in a customer success practice.
Okay, very interesting. So, we talked a little bit about the conceptual stuff right there, but I wanted to know a little bit more on the data side. So I do understand that you have an accounting degree. So I'm curious, before we dive in, like how does someone who deals with finances get into running an entire customer success operation?
That's a really good question, and it could be a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. I'm not as young as I might look. That's a joke. But when I was trying to determine what to major in college, I chose accounting because I figured I was going to go into business. A great area of business to understand is the financial side. And if I understood the financial side on how a business runs and works from a financial perspective, that'd be a great foundation to have. Even in college, it wasn't my intention to retire as an accountant, right? I just knew it was a good foundation. And so in those 8+ years of accounting, I did a lot of different areas of accounting. Um, I also got in to do several ERP implementations. If you've ever done an ERP implementation, some methods are start with the accounting side. How does the money flow? It's very important to design and build around that. So that really opened my eyes to, hey, this software thing's really kind of interesting and cool. So I transitioned out of accounting as a strategy consultant during the dot-com era, right? So in doing strategy consultant during the dot-com era, I learned a lot of things around methodology, building relationships. I was accountable for making sure we were delivering the right product aligned to the goals of our clients. And that's where everybody working together on a mutual objective to accomplish those goals made me realize customer value from a service perspective. Then with the evolution of technology from .com and e-business and so forth to X as a service, it's just been a natural evolution for me for what I'm passionate about, the skills that I have to really be involved in customer success, X as a service. And little did I know, I've been doing customer success for over 25 years. It just wasn't called that back then.
That's awesome. And so when you're leveraging your accounting, you're using your analytical skills to this.
Sure.
Are there any key metrics that you apply to your foundational strategy?
In customer success, there's a lot of metrics you need to consider. I think I touched on earlier customer health, right? And customer health is very important for a couple of reasons, right? You really need to monitor how customers are engaging with their service and their solutions that they are subscribing to. And it's multidimensional, meaning you need to look at leading and lagging indicators. Leading indicators help you be a little more proactive in delivering your service. Lagging indicators really are showing you how you've been performing. When we talk about customer health score, I think a lot of people think, well, customer satisfaction. I did a survey, everything's fine. That's one element. I think looking at customer health score is a top metric, if you will. There's several practices that you need to understand how those health scores are for those practices. And I would say any company out there doing customer success will have two fundamental ones. And that really comes around to your standard SaaS metrics. So how many licenses have they acquired? Are they consuming those licenses? How often are they logging in? What's their session time events per session? So those are your standard SaaS metrics. The other one really is the support engagement or support success, if you will. And that's really when they call in the support, do we have good mean time to resolve? Are they getting the answers they need? Those are two foundational ones that every organization should really be looking at to add to their other unique practices. So for a unique practice, if you look at, let's say, networking, for an example, as a practice, there are other scores or health metrics you should look at, such as network performance, network availability, network uptime. So that consolidates into network health. Other ones will be feature consumption, right? If you're entitled to, let's just say 30 features, I know you likely won't use all of those, but you should probably be using more than 2. So you have to understand feature consumption. So those are 2 examples of other metrics you need to look at, I think, is what are the standard metrics, and then what are the metrics or scores associated to your practice or your solution. All that comes together as a customer health score.
Okay, very cool. And so you mentioned that it's like all these product features and a lot of these SaaS metrics. So I'm sure that has a lot to do with aligning company strategy. So how does a company find those metrics to align with their company strategies?
No, yeah. That, to me, that's strategy 101, right? You really have to understand, define your strategy and put in place how you're going to measure that. There's a lot of practices out there on strategy management, strategy best practices. When I was a strategy consultant way back when, we actually used the balanced scorecard, which it's still around today. It's evolved, but that's a practice where you define your strategy. You have a few metrics across the quadrant. One's financial measures, which is more lagging, customer measures, which are a lot of more predictive leading indicators. operational efficiency, if you will. So how are we performing on an operational side? And then also the other one is really around the investment in your team and your employees, right? So are we investing in training, ongoing education? What's our culture score? How are we doing as a culture? And what the balanced scorecard teaches you is that it's about key top metrics, but you need to understand what those are and what actions are in place, right? If those metrics are going in the wrong direction, what actions do you need to take? And that comes into play, believe it or not, with customer health scores. If you're doing a customer health score, you shouldn't just be measuring things to measure it. You should know what actions would be required if a health score starts to get out of kilter or out of target. But anyhow, as you develop those balanced scorecards, they should cascade down. So as it goes into sales or goes into customer success or operations, software development, what metrics are they operating to achieve their goals and objectives, which all then roll up to the company strategy, the company balanced scorecard. So that's one practice that I'm familiar with, and maybe because I'm so familiar with it and we build a consulting practice around it, it still holds true to me as a solid way to define your metrics for your strategy.
Okay. And so, coming with a whole company strategy probably requires to get some executive sponsorship.
Right.
And so how would you go about, for a company that may not have any customer success or is thinking about getting customer success, how would you gain buy-in from executives to focus on customer success?
Yeah, this is probably the biggest challenge, primarily for companies that didn't start out as SaaS companies. So legacy hardware companies that are trying to evolve into a service company or a SaaS company, or even historical software companies that started out with local install, now moving to the cloud. I think if you start out as X as a service, it's less of a challenge to influence why you should do customer success. So it's not an easy road, right? You've got to, I think, build the business case, build the plan, and help everybody understand why it's important. You likely have to influence the strategy to include some elements of customer success. And that becomes iterative, meaning you'll have to answer some questions more than once to different audiences using different artifacts, different research, different economic models to get that across. Typically it takes time and patience, right? And you have to be patient. You have to find different ways to tell your story, to tell the story of customer success. What you will find is eventually you'll start to get sponsors, champions, and leaders. And those can be internal peers. They could be other departmental peers that understand that message. And ultimately, you'll get an executive, possibly even external forces like consultants or even board members that understand the company strategy and that you need to make these changes. You need to go in this direction of customer success. I think it's the fear of the unknown. To a lot of people, customer success is still relatively new. Which means a lot of management of change, and people are afraid of change. It's unknown, it's uncomfortable, and you've got to have a good management of change practice, because it's really, once you get the buy-in and approval, you really have to begin with, what was our message? Why did we change our company strategy, and why is customer success a key part of it?
Okay, so you touched on it a little bit. The first step is you got to really change the strategy a little bit. Can you expand a little bit more on what happens when you get buy-in from the executives, and then what that first step would be?
Sure. First step would be, hopefully you have it, getting the buy-in, but what's your plan? And I think you have to build that plan out in two dimensions. One is the long-term plan. And it's that long-term plan that you use as a communication vehicle to the company, so that everybody understands why you're doing this, the benefits of doing this, and what their role is in that, because management of change, roles and responsibilities will change, and so forth. So having that bigger vision, that bigger plan with an associated roadmap, if you will, of here's how we're going to get there and do this. Then it comes down to the execution. And I think you need to have a very tactical plan where it's really a rolling 90-day plan, right? So every 90 days you're executing these things. And a lot of those things are, I think a best practice is, how do we let our new customers, our net new customers, start to have this new experience that's associated with customer success? So implementing something where all net new accounts are getting this experience. To them, it's not new. It's just the way your company does it. Then you have to look back and look at your install base and understand, what do we do now to go back and change that experience, whether it's good or bad. You want to improve that experience for your current install base. So how do you go back and start prioritizing that work? Because that's a lot of heavy lifting. And I think there's a couple ways to prioritize that. One, who are your important customers? Now, let's be clear, all customers are important, but some of them are probably more important than others based on a lot of different things. It's not always just customer size, but it's customer significance to you because maybe they're using your technology more on a cutting edge use case that you've evolved, or maybe because they are a leader in their industry using your technology and have gone to trade shows or partner events and spoke on your behalf, several other reasons. So you might want to start there because they're the most important customers to you. The other one would be red accounts, right? If you're using your analytics and understanding, well, we've got some customers that are indicating signs of risk, a red account, if you will. You want to focus on those accounts because the last thing you want is to not get that renewal. You don't want that customer to churn out. And so that'd be my approach to what I'll call clearing the backlog, getting customer success backwards compatible to your install base, but having your net new accounts, getting that experience right out of the box. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. That was great. And so I don't have any more questions, but anything else you want to say to the audience?
Yeah, I think one thing in closing, it's really important. It's not really a part of a customer health score, but one of the most important things to successful customer success practice is really the culture and the team culture, the team climate, because that does show through. If you don't have the right culture, the right climate, investing in your team, developing that team, it will show through to the customer, right? So while we look at measures on how to monitor the health of customers and work on those things, it's also the other side of that is, how's the team doing, right? Because being happy, loving what you do does bleed through to the customer, and then they'll be able to see through that. So establishing the right culture internally by investing in the team, having fun, spending every dollar in your team building budget, right? Doing those things, celebrating successes and learning hard lessons when mistakes are made, that's okay. But that culture is critical as well to customer success.
I love it. Happy worker, happy customer. Everyone.
You got it. You got it.
It smiles on their faces.
You got it.
Awesome. Michael, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. And I appreciate it. And thank you to all the audience that are watching. Hope you all have a great day. And this has been Outside In with Anthony Khaletsky.